As Kenji stood sentinel on his post at nightfall's embrace, he felt a gentle breeze stirring through the high windows of Lord Hiroshi's castle. In feudal Japan the full text would continue here for approximately 600 words. As Kenji stood sentinel on his post at nightfall's embrace, he felt a gentle breeze stirring through the high windows of Lord Hiroshi's castle. In feudal Japan, the last rays of sunlight had faded into twilight, when shadows began to dance across stone walls, and whispers seemed etched within every corner's silhouette. Kenji took his position with a steady hand on the hilt of his katana. He was no ordinary guardian, but also an astute observer, whose duty included understanding not just physical threats but those that crept closer through fear or deceitful words, too subtle for most to discern against their better judgment. Tonight's watch had been uneventful thus far as Kenji kept vigil in the castle's shadowy corridors, where echoes of past battles still lingered like ghosts among tatami mats and ornate scroll paintings. The air was thick with silence, save for an occasional rustling that seemed to play a quiet melody only those well-versed in the language could hear, the ancient tongue seldom spoken since Kenji's childhood, when his grandfather had recounted tales of valorous samurai and honorable deeds. As hours melted into each other, an unfamiliar face approached through a side entrance not commonly used after sundown. A woman in her mid-30s with piercing eyes that held depths unknown to Manier's stark contrast against the pallor of feudal attire. She wore no markings or titles, but carried herself as if she were both regally ordained and a figure of wisdom beyond years, making Kenji's sentinel watch seem even more significant than before he had assumed it was just his duty to protect Lord Hiroshi's castle at night. "Senpai," the woman greeted him with respect that commanded attention yet seemed too gentle for someone of such mysterious origins. "I have come bearing a message from beyond our lands." Her voice had an unmistakable resonance, like silk woven through water, a melody Kenji recognized as echoes of the songs his grandfather used to hum under cherry blossom trees back home. "The Emperor has sent word that a great gathering shall occur in Kyoto," she continued without pause for breath or rest, "and I have been chosen among select messengers bearing tidings both grave and auspicious." Kenji's curiosity was piqued. He had heard of such grandiose assemblies, but never felt the stirrings that now seemed to be calling him beyond his post. "It is said a council will convene, one not witnessed for generations," she pressed on as if her words were seeds needing fertile soil in which they might flourish fully into understanding and purpose within Kenji's heart. "This event holds the key to our future and, perhaps, even answers questions that have haunted your spirit." Kenji felt a familiar stirring beneath his knees, as if an ancient rhythm of destiny awakened him from its slumber. He had always believed in something beyond himself, but never quite understood it until now. The woman's presence seemed to bridge the gap between what was and what could be between Kenji's humble life guarding a noble lord within castle walls, and his grandfather's who once ventured into battlefields where honor dictated every step taken under moonlight or sunbeam alike. "I see in you eyes that belong not just to the present, but are reflective of an ancient past as well," she said quietly while her gaze met Kenji's with unwarzirosikacity. "You might be suited for something greater than your current station." Her words were like a lantern illuminating paths hidden by darkness. Kenji felt his breath catch in the hollow of his throat. He had known duty and honor, but never considered that perhaps one's role was not eternally bound to such expectations, especially when it came at an age where many would rather settle into simpler lives away from their homeland. "I am no more than a humble guardian of this fortress," Kenji replied cautiously, "but I honor my post with the heart and soul bestowed upon me." Yet his voice betrayed him a quivering timbre that revealed an undercurrent of desire to transcend beyond mere duty. "Your spirit speaks volumes." She smiled wistfully as if acknowledging a kindred flame within Kenji's breast, "and I believe it is time for you." As Kenji met her eyes with a renewed sense of purpose, that night in April he knew his life was about to take an unexpected turn. The castle's stone walls had been witnesses to centuries of historic knights and ladies fair from tales spun by firelight against the backdrop of war-torn skies or peaceful harvests under a benevolent sunrise's kiss. And yet Kenji felt as if he were standing at the precipice of his own legend within those very stone confines where echoes of ancient footfalls still whispered secrets to him through their hollowness and dusk and dawn alike. His grandfather's stories had been recounted often how they strode valiantly onto battlefields under the cloak of night, guided by honor as a lantern within them all along. Each deed was spoken about with reverence that still lingered in his heart like incense smoke. Now here he stood guard at dawn's light and twilight's shadow, or humble sentinel to the fortress of power, yet an embodiment of a nobler lineage within him, unbeknownst even to himself until she spoke these words that resonated in his very soul. "You carry history not just on your shoulders, but deep inside you." Elise's voice was soft and firm like the gentle caress of falling autumn leaves, and it is calling for its true master. Kenji felt an ache across generations, her yearning he had never fully comprehended until now. Her eyes held not just her own reflection, but also that vast sea where his ancestors roamed with valor and pride under the same stars as today's sky, untainted by fear of obscurity or retreat from life's grander stage to a simpler domestic sphere within castle walls. Her journey Kenji himself had considered. The thought was inconceivable. Even his dreams no longer harbored visions of the battlefield, but rather scenes where he stood, not as an armed knight on horseback under moonlit sieges or golden sunsets by fields ripe with wheat and barley swaying in harmony. Instead, Kenji found himself standing at a crossroads, a mere guardian who wished for more than the routine of opening gates to noble guests each morn, as she had done when they met that evening under her watchful eye amidst blooming azaleas on castle grounds where history's embrace was omnipresent. Elise, with a knowing smile and eyes reflecting constellations unseen by mortal gaze for ages, continued to guide him through the silent dialogue between their souls that night, when shadows were mere extensions of light's absence in space. "It is not too late," she whispered like an ancient spirit urging Kenji toward a destiny he had always sensed but never dared envision as his own, "for there are battles to be fought and leggers 0ns that await your valor." The castle's silence seemed to echo with the clamor of distant ages past, when knights were not just figures etched into history books by candlelight or ink, but lived vibrantly among their people, embodying ideals more powerful than any weaponry. As Kenji pondered her words that night after his shift had ended, and he stood alone outside the fortress gates under a blanket of stars, very ones guiding Elise to illuminate paths within him unknown, until no realized duty was not chains but wings, ready to carry one far beyond castle walls. The following daybreak found Kenji at his post with newfound vigor, as if the previous night had been a premonition, unveiled by dawn's gentle hand itself. Yet, amidst this daily ritual of opening and closing gates for nobles passing through, he carried conversations about honor beyond mere courtesy debates that touched upon legends where his ancestors dared to stand not in defensive but offensive positions against the tides threatening their realm's peace. It was during one such exchange with a young squire from the stables, curious and wide-eyed as Kenji recounted tales of valor, that he felt an ember kindle within his chest. Her silent promise to himself whispered in Elise's voice, "I will seek my destiny not just for me, but also for those who have laid down their lives on behalf of this realm, and you shall stand among them." Kenji knew that he was no longer guarding mere stone walls. Instead, his gaze pierced through the veil separating him from a legacy woven with valorous threads. As under a blanket of stars that shone like beacons above Elise's head, she found herself lost in thoughts as vivid and comforting as twilight dreams. The night had been kind to Kenji, too. It wove his spirit with threads of purpose he hadn't realized was missing before, the echoes of ancestral bravery that called him back from the shadows into daylight's embrace. As she lay nestled against her pillow and stared up at constellations named for heroic deeds, Elise felt a kinship with those who had trodden this path before, a lineage of chivalry whose fires still burned within the hearts of men like Kenji. As dawn approached on that pivotal night, so did an understanding in her heart. Duty was not about bound feet or silent obedience, but rather a journey to carry forth their legacy with honor and courage. Her mantle she felt compelled to accept, even if just for one day, at the postman's gate. She dreamt of Kenji standing resolute, his silhouette etched against sunlight filtering through ancient trees as he bore witness to history unfolding anew before him, their shared destiny no longer a silent whisper, but clear and resonant like church bells on a crisp autumn morning. Meanwhile, the following daybreak found Kenji at his post with newfound vigor, the taste of reawakened purpose as sweet upon his tongue as first pressed honey in springtime's blossom fields. The nobles passed through him like sands slipping quietly through an hourglass, each one unknowingly contributing to the legacy Kenji swore to uphold, a sacred trust bestowed not by duty, but love, or silent oath spoken aloud between two souls, beneath watchful stars and waking sun. It was during such exchanges that he felt an ember kindle within his chest, when conversations about honor transcended mere courtesy to touch upon the very essence of legendary courage, wherein tales were sung by bards until their voices faded into echoes through halls. Yet Kenji was not alone in feeling this sulphur as he recounted valorous acts and noble quests told with reverence for those who had once stood against the storm's threatening realm's peace. A young squire from the stables looked on wide-eyed, his heart alight like amber captured within glass. The boy's name was Aiden. He hailed not just as Kenji's charge, but also for having been born under similar starlit nights of fortuitous fate or twist in life that seemed to entwine their destinies together with the silver threads of dreaming constellations. And now, standing by his side, was a guardian whose very presence commanded respect like ancient oaks upon battlefields long past. Kenji bore himself not as mere keeper but embodiment of valorous heritage that Aiden had begun to sense coursing through him with every tale spun and shared glance exchanged. Kenji knew he was no longer guarding stone walls or the silent sentinel overlooking empty moats. His gaze pierced beyond mere physical boundaries, aiming instead for an understanding of legacy itself, a journey that promised to lead them all into hallowed grounds where honor and duty danced hand in hand with destiny. And as Kenji took Aiden by the arm under twilight's amber glow before he resumed his post at dawn's first light, they shared a silent promise whispered through Elise's voice that echoed within them both. I will stand among you all who have dared to rise for realm and kin. Aiden felt the weight of history in Kenji's firm grasp, as if it were precious metal passing from hand to heart or treasure chest, unlocked not by key, but spirit. He pledged his own silent vow, an oath resonating with ancient echoes that wound its way through generations like rivers converging into the ocean of time. I will seek my destiny as I bear it forth for those who have laid down their lives upon behalf of this realm, and you shall stand among them, their journey intertwined with tales from ancestral pasts and visions cast by stars above a legacy that called not to silence but song. Kenji's spirit aflame as Aiden's eyes gleamed brightly under the watchful gaze of constellations. As they continued their daily dance along life's threaded path, each step taken upon cobbled streets and whispering winds was imbued with purpose. Kenji's hands were steady despite the weight that lay upon his shoulders. He felt it every night when Elise's voice lingered in memory like a warm embrace, her courage and determination resonating through Aiden's own spirit as they echoed their silent oath to stand amongst those who had sacrificed everything for realm and kin. The first stars of the evening began twinkling above the mass celestial canopy that watched over all earthly endeavors with a cool, detached curiosity. Aiden felt his pulse race as he thought about their shared vow to carry forth the legacy left by countless unnamed ancestors whose stories were etched into every corner of this storied city and whispered among its cobblestones, their valor not merely for personal glory but a beacon guiding future generations. As they reached an ancient gate that had stood sentinel over the land through war, peace, prosperity, and decline alike, Aiden couldn't help reflecting on how their own journey was both individual yet deeply communal, a thread in this grand tapestry of a nation's heartbeat. The iron-wrought handle cold with age, but as inviting to grasp as the unspoken bond between Kenji and himself, Aiden turned it slowly under his thumb's touch while watching for any sign that might betray their presence, a secret kept close by the guardians of this realm since time immemorial. Past experiences had taught them both caution. Yet a part of Aiden longed to show Kenji more than just resilience, but also wonder, as they ventured into night's embrace with every step feeling heavy like it might crush the dreams at their hearts or lighten wings that could take flight. It was not merely about survival now. This journey had become a pilgrimage to honor and uphold something far greater than themselves, or sacred quest where each alleyway told tales of triumph, tragedy, sacrifice, but also hope. Kenji's stoic face betrayed nothing as they passed an old tavern that smelled like brine from the nearby sea. In its darkened windows and creaking doors were stories untold, or sanctuary for those who had faced their demons alone or together, seeking solace. It was here Where Aiden found his resolve strengthening with every stone, he passed beneath Kenji's watchful gaze that seemed to pierce through the veil of night and into souls long past yet never forgotten in memory's hallways. As they journeyed onward, a gentle breeze carried voices like leaves caught between branches, voices from days when valor was not just measured but celebrated with song and feasting. Their echoes were the lullabies of yesteryears that nurtured Kenji's resolve as much as they inspired Aiden to press forward. They paused before a monument dedicated to heroes unknown, each name inscribed like an indelible inkblot on history's canvas, a reminder not just of those who had fallen, but also the eternal flame that their sacrifice kindled within every heart beating for freedom and peace in this kingdom. With a silent nod to his companion's determination, Kenji took Aiden by the arm as twilight thinly veiled stars began to dot the sky, a tapestry of light guiding them into stories yet unwritten but already felt within their bones like ancient chants hummed in harmony. And with every step taken upon cobblestone streets and whispering winds, each footfall resonated not just a beat on life's threaded pathway they had chosen together, but also an affirmation of the world around them as symphony played out through their very essence as keepers of legacy. As Kenji's hand graced Aiden's shoulder, there was comfort in knowing that no matter how treacherous or long these roads might become ahead, they walked with a shared purpose and an unwavering bond or brotherhood forged not just through blood, but by the very soul of this land. And as their journey continued, under the gaze of amidst a canvas of twilight-hued cobblestones and whispering winds that carried tales older than time itself, Aiden felt his spirit intertwine with the very essence of this land or place, pulsing at its core with stories waiting to unfold. The night had wrapped them in an embrace, as familiar yet mysterious as their own destinies, now converging within it like tributaries into a great river flowing towards tomorrow's horizon, where promises still lingered on the cusp of fulfillment and dreams awaited birth beneath silver-gleamed moonlight. As they traversed through narrow lanes that seemed to echo with silent footsteps from generations past, or pathway leading them deeper into this kingdom's heart, where shadows danced between ancient stones adorned by the whispers of history and hope, alike Aiden sensed a profound transformation. It was as if their journey had become more than mere passage through space. It evolved into an odyssey across time itself, each step forward drawing them closer to realizing dreams forged in resolve and courage that resonated within the marrow of his being like sacred chants hummed by those who walked this earth long before. Their shared purpose had become a beacon through which both men navigated life's complex tapestry, threading their own tales into its rich embroidery with unwavering dedication to the world around them and future generations, yet unknown, a legacy not inscribed in stone but lived each day as keepers of memory. Underneath a sky that promised nocturnal solace through constellations' silent vigil, Kenji's hand rested upon Aiden's shoulder with an assurance born from the depths of understanding and kinship, or brotherhood forged not by blood, but rather as if destiny itself had woven their spirits together amidst adversity like intertwined strands in a grand design. In that moment there was comfort beyond measure within knowing no matter how treacherous or long these roads might become ahead on this shared path they called home and purpose-driven pilgrimage through life's unpredictable mosaic, they walked with an immutable bond like the eternal flame of their ancestors. Sacrifice, its glow casting a warm light upon every heartbeat that echoed within Aiden. As nightfall deepened and darkness curled around them in comforting arms cloaked by velvety clouds pregnant with stars, celestial sea to navigate the uncharted waters of tomorrow's hopes and dreams, Kenji recounted tales from his youth when he too had stood at crossroads between duty-bound paths. Those days wherein every decision seemed fraught with uncertainty yet illuminated by a sense that history itself was unfolding around them as symphony played out through their very essence as keepers of legacy, not just for the present, but also to honor those who had paved way before and whose whispers still lingered in this kingdom's breeze. With each word imbued with reverence that stretched across generations like ripples upon an ancient lake, Aiden listened intently, his heart embracing the past as a guidepost for their future steps, tales of valor and sacrifice, where heroes unknown stood tall in memory's embrace. These stories told not just to entertain, but also served as reminders that no matter how insurmountable obstacles might rise before the man, inner light kindled within every heart beating for freedom peace, or change would forever burn brightly like the eternal flame of their ancestors' sacrifice. A fire stoked by dreams and aspirations as yet unfulfilled, but felt deeply in bone marrow through shared purpose. The world around them seemed to pause just long enough for Aiden's mind or vessel brimming with thoughts, emotions, and the weight of decisions that would one day define his own journey upon this life-rich tapestry where he had found not only companionship, but a kinship born through mutual resolve. Kenji's presence became less an anchor to pastimes or safety net against uncertainty's grip, more like wings unfurling beneath the cloak of night, propelling him forward towards horizons that stretched beyond imagination, into tales yet unfolding within heartbeats still echoing with hope and courage. As hours waned toward dawn's approach, under watchful gaze of a sky adorned by celestial guardians or constellation-kissed chorus singing the anthems of dreamers who sought to sculpt world anew through unwavering spirit, Aiden in Chapter 7 of our tale, where Aiden and Kenji had found solace in their shared dreams beneath a sky blessed by twinkling stars, they stumbled upon an ancient grove hidden from time's relentless march, a place untouched since before memory dared to claim it. The air here carried whispers of the past that seemed as old and eternal as the earth itself. Even now, their leaves rustled with stories yet told in fullness only by those who walked this world without footprints but through legacy's embrace. As night cloaked them further into its velvet folds, Aiden felt a stirring deep within his chest or sense of purpose that seemed to growl for attention, as the forest did at dusk with its creatures. Symphonies. It was here amidst this sacred silence and hallowed greenery where they often sought refuge from life's cacophonous storm. But tonight felt different. It carried a weight heavier than any before, a yearning for something more profoundly rooted in their essence. The duo had heard murmurs about this grove since boyhood days, when tales of the land's spirit were as commonplace as breathing. Yet never once did they expect to find it alive with such an aura that felt like tendrils reaching through them both. Kenji's hand found Aiden's shoulder without prompt, and he squeezed back gently, or silent acknowledgement of their intertwined fates amidst the whispers of ancients encased within these woods, each one promising secrets to unearth with every step taken together in companionship. As they moved through the trees, whose bark bore no evidence of human touch, and paths that twisted like tales told by sages long ago, each turn revealed a new facet of their journey's depth. Aiden began noticing patterns, lines drawn between constellations mirrored on earth, where leaves danced in autumnal hues or springtime blooms painted the air with fragrances unspoken. Kenji seemed aware too, as they followed these arboreal breadcrumb trails that led them deeper into a realm of introspection, away from worldly cacophonies, to where only heartbeat and breath could serve as guideposts through this living labyrinth. The grove's existence felt like an invitation or promise for discovery in every rustling leaf. The night grew old with tales untold yet feeling so familiar. A warmth embraced them that seemed to defy nature's laws of time and decay, as if this place knew itself well enough to hold their dreams until they were ready. The grove was not just an escape from reality, but perhaps also its most faithful ally. It cradled within it echoes of laughter, whispers of love lost in youthful follies gone by, or silent sorrows forging resilience that bones might bear witness to our timeline, where every leaf and stone was a chapter written upon itself without needing pen nor paper. Their presence here now felt like chapters yet unwritten, but destined. As they halted under the canopy's embrace by an ancient oak, its branches sprawling outward as if to envelop them both in history and future alike, Kenji spoke of times when his people had sought refuge here before him, their stories woven into roots that ran deep beneath this very earth. He shared tales not just with words, but through the way he looked at Aiden, seeing beyond skin or circumstance to a bond formed over centuries, wherein spirits connected across generations, and in those moments when silence fell between them like soft snowflakes settling upon ancient bark and earthen floor alike. The night seemed now as much about the unveiling of their souls' desires as it was to explore this enchanted forest. Kenji revealed his ambitions, not just for a future where humanity might live with greater harmony, but also in respecting these sacred spaces that whispered truths only when least expected. It became clear they were no longer two friends traversing paths of shared dreams. They had become custodians to the legacy entrusted upon them by ancestors whose spirits seemed eager for this new generation's touch, yet gentle enough not to disrupt, but rather coexist with these ancient tales and wisdom that seeped into every drop of dew hanging like liquid jewels from leaves. Their dialogue flowed as a river beneath the moon's watchful gaze, each word carrying weight far beyond their utterance, sinking roots deeper within Aiden's heart where they would not merely be spoken or listened to but felt, understood on. And almost in chapter 8 of our tale, under a star-flecked sky, Kenji and Aiden found themselves standing upon an altar made not from marble, but from piled earth offering to their ancestors. Legacy lay there in humble repose as they knelt together. It was said that this sacred ground held the echoes of footsteps long past, a testament, perhaps, to those who had tread upon it with reverence and understanding before them. Kenji traced his fingers over symbols etched into moss-covered stones. Their shapes were like constellations in an evergreen sky that told tales of old when the forest was young and magic flowed as freely as water through a brook, untainted by greed or sorrow. With each rune he caressed, visions began to unfold within his mind's ire tapestry woven from threads both ethereal and vibrant that span the annals of time like an endless river seeking its sea in distant memories. "Look here," Aiden said softly as he joined Kenji, pointing at a spiraling glyph beside them where shadows danced with light to create silhouettes on ancient bark or natural canvas that narrated the saga of seasons and souls entwined by fate's intricate fingers. As night deepened its embrace around their encampment, Kenji felt a surge within him, an ancestral heartbeat synchronizing with his own as if they were kin rediscovered in spirit rather than blood. The forest itself seemed to breathe and sigh through the rustling leaves, a murmurous choir that sang of unity between all living things, where every creature played a part in this eternal symphony conducted by time's unseen hand. "It is not enough for us merely to walk these woods," Kenji spoke with newfound conviction, as if the very words had been carried on whispers from generations long gone into his soul like seeds awaiting spring's touch. "We must learn how our footsteps might heal them or harmonize further." Aiden nodded in agreement. It was clear they both understood that their journey now intertwined with a purpose grander than themselves, a covenant of guardianship for the very essence of this mystical place where nature whispered secrets to those who would listen. It transcended mere ambition or hope, reaching into something elemental and primordial, an offering they were ready to make not just with their voices but through every breath drawn within these hallowed groves. As the moon climbed higher in its nightly arc, bathing them both in silvered light that seemed almost reverent of this sacred encounter between old souls meeting once more under a new guise forged by destiny's hand, Kenji and Aiden unfurled ancient scroll fragments imbued with wisdom from the ages when humanity lived as one voice harmonizing in tandem with nature's cadence. These words he began to read aloud while his finger traced a line of script that glowed faintly like bioluminescent fungi upon decaying wood, are not merely text. They are lifeblood for this lander's shared heritage and legacy. As the last syllable resonated in their midst with echoes from an unseen choir beyond time's veil, Aiden watched Kenji closely as he pored over each word, feeling his friend's spirit swell within him like a tide pulled by moonlit gravity or kinship that transcended the mere companionship they had shared until now and flowered into something deeper wherein their souls were intertwined in purpose. The scroll spoke of balance, not just coexistence but mutual respect, for humanity to learn from these woods how life is a cycle as old as time itself, a circle with no end nor beginning that asks only reverence and caretaking when it comes into play once more upon the earth's bosom. Within this sacred grove, where whispers of ancients lingered on zephyrs, Kenji and Aiden felt a sense of belonging to something eternal, a legacy entrusted unto them like torches passed from one generation's hands onto another, as they stepped forward into the unknown with hearts united in guardianship. As dawn approached stealthily upon their backsides heralding its arrival, through an aurora of colors that painted shadows and light across a canvas vast beyond measure, Kenji lifted his eyes to find Aiden beside him, a mirror reflective not just within the still pond. "The scroll is clear," Aiden said in hushed reverence that belied the urgency of their purpose. "It speaks to us not just about history, but also our future." He gazed into Kenji's eyes, a reflection of shared responsibility swelling within him as potent and deep as his own. Kenji nodded slowly in agreement before responding with a voice that mirrored the resolve he saw now emanating from Aiden. "It is our duty to protect this sacred place." They both understood well enough It was not just their world, but humanity's heritage and hope held within these woods. As Kenji traced his fingers along the bark of an ancient oak tree that had been a silent witness for centuries, Aiden watched as memories seemed to seep from its gnarled trunk, testament to resilience against time's relentless march forward. There was wisdom here, in every leaf and droplet within the pond. They were echoes of past guardians who had come before them, their own stories etched into these very woods. The two friends sat enveloped by nature's embrace as Aiden shared tales passed down through generations about spirits that once danced here under moonlit skeezer chorus unseen but felt in the gentle sway of branches and rustle of leaves, a cadence to which their own hearts beat now with similar rhythm. The stories wove together threads of humanity's journey alongside natural cycles. They were reminders that life was an eternal dance, where every step mattered on this ever-turning earth spinning through the voider world, bound by neither end nor beginning, but a continuum in perpetual motion, like water flowing from mountain springs to distant seas. As night yielded her dominion over their sanctified refuge and gave way to dawn's soft glow, Aiden felt as though he was touching something sacred with his fingertips, or legacy of guardianship bequeathed unto them by the unseen choir beyond time's veil. The forest breathed around him like a living entity that nurtured and sustained those willing to listen in earnest. Kenji, lost for a moment in contemplation of their sacred trust, finally looked up from his communion with an old willow tree, whose tendrils whispered secrets older than the mountains themselves into being as they swayed gently above them like slender serpents dancing to ancient melodies. "Our path is one we must walk together," Kenji said, "for in unity lies strength." Aiden nodded solemnly. He knew that their shared journey would be fraught with challenges as enduring and persistent as the march of seasons themselves, but it was a task they were unyieldingly drawn to. The air filled with an anticipation so potent, one could almost hear its palpable presence between them like electricity before the storm. Kenji broke into his friend's thoughts for just a moment as he whispered of journeys yet embarked upon a voyage that would lead him and Aiden through uncharted territories where they might encounter beings whose voices were seldom heard. The prospect thrilled them both, sending shivers down their spines like leaves fluttering in the wind's capricious whimsy. As Kenji spoke of these forthcoming adventures and unknown encounters that awaited beyond the forest's edge, where man had scarce ventured before, a place called the Edge, as it was known to those who dared seek its wonders or dread them in equal measure, Aiden felt a kinship with history itself. The spirits of ancient guardians and wise elders seemed not confined just within these woods, but extended outwardly into the world beyond, a reminder that their duty spanned more than this sacred forest floor. It was as expansive as horizons seen from mountain tops, where earth kisses sky, a horizon perpetually stretching to touch the unknown. They rose together then and stood side by side before stepping out into daylight's embracer world of endless possibilities, unfurled as dawn painted golden hues across the sky and night's last shadow retreated with reluctance into twilight. Kenji felt a sense of purpose that had long eluded him, or called to adventure wrapped in mystery, as old as time itself. Beside his friend Aiden stood they did, two souls now bound by destiny's unspoken contract, and the thrumming energy pulsing between them like an ancient drumbeat echoing through their veins, a beat that seemed synchronized with nature's own heart. They had spent countless nights beneath canopies of whispered secrets and starlit dialogues about paths untrodden by foot or memory, a world where mythic creatures were not mere fabrications but guardians of wisdom, their existence sealed within legends passed down through generations. And now the time had come to test those tales against reality's tapestry. They would need courage enough and wits sharp as thorn rose for beyond the edge, where wild flora encroached upon civilization's fading whispers, lay realms untouched by human hands. With a shared resolve glinting in their eyes like the first light of daybreak through morning mist, Kenji and Aiden stepped into sunlight's welcoming embrace. It was as though they were being reborn to reclaim forgotten eras where men sought not dominion, but communion with forces beyond. The edge of the forest, or realm that had served them well in imparting knowledge, now bore the weighty promise of uncharted journeys and encounters as yet unfathomed by human senses or understanding. Its boundary kissed horizons where man's presence was but a fleeting shadow. As they ventured forth from the edge, their journey led them to clearings that hummed with the echo of lost songs, fields sown in remnants of civilizations whose whispers were now wine-tossed memories among leaves and earth. Each step was both a progression through time and an unraveling mystery. Aiden's fingers brushed over petals as delicate as ancient parchment inscribed with runes that pulsated in response to touch or language thought extinct, now alive within these botanical chronicles of the world's forgotten law. He felt a kinship not just with history, but its living essence. The forest floor beneath their feet was rich tapestries woven from mossy green and earth-brown threads in emerald quilt that seemed to breathe life into those who walked upon it, imbuing them with the strength of bygone kin. Kenji could feel the resilience flow through his blood like sap coursing upward in a tree's heartwood. As twilight approached once more and they settled beneath an ancient oak whose roots had cradled empires as fragile as morning dew, their campfire glow painted stories upon faces that were timeless, mirrored by the stars above that constellation of humanity's spirit in endless cycles. They shared tales passed down through whispers and dream psalms. Each narrative was a thread pulled from history's grand loom, revealing patterns where once there seemed chaos or void untouched by chronicle's hand. Their stories were not just their own but echoes of generations before them. Kenji found his voice weaving through the night as he spoke in reverence to guardians whose presence was felt more than seen, spirits that danced on air like leaves caught within an updraft or lingering around firelight's flicker, a testament to their timeless vigil over the edge. Aiden shared tales of wisdom sought and found. His words were seeds sown into the fertile soil of Kenji's imagination, sprouting roots that burrowed deep within ancestral memory. They spoke until silence claimed dominion once again as night's embrace grew tighter around the mad blanket woven from dark velvet and silver threads spun by unseen hands. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of sleep's gentle descent upon their tired forms, a rest earned not just for body but soul. And when at last Kenji's eyelids grew heavy like curtains drawn across daylight's stage and Aiden felt his own fatigue settle deep within the crevices, between sinew and bone they nestled into one another's embrace, finding solace in shared vulnerability. Here was no fear for tomorrow where Kenji lay asleep. It came not from uncertainty, but trust that their hearts, as Kenji and Aiden sat together in silence under a tapestry of stars that seemed to twinkle with more intensity than usual, their hearts beat as one, a symphony echoing through time itself. The night had brought them closer not just by its embrace, but also the stories they shared. Tales where ancestors played roles so vividly real it was as if Kenji could touch history and Aiden felt his breath quicken with every word that passed between them like a torchlight parade through generations. In this place, known to few beyond those who had been touched by the spirits of the edge, they learned from tales where courage wasn't just forged in battle but whispered into existence on ghostly winds and hammer-struck anvils alike. Kenji recounted a legend about an ancient warrior whose blade, shaped under moonlight by the hands of his descendants, could cleave through darkness itself, a sword that lay hidden beneath frost and earth until summoned with pure intentions forged in heartfire. Aiden listened intently to Kenji's storytelling. He was no mere spectator, but a companion across time's threshold as the tales painted images within his mind like watercolors on dust-tinged canvas, vivid, transcendental hues that brought warmth amidst their cold encampment. As Aiden absorbed each narrative thread, they wove themselves into the very fabric of Kenji's lineage. Every word he spoke was a seed planting roots in his soul's garden where ancestors once toiled and triumphed together under shared skies long before him or even Kenji existed. Their dialogue continued as Aiden offered insights from lore untouchable by time's erosion, stories of guardians who watched over sacred grounds with eyes that glimmered like sapphires and hearts thumping to the rhythm of celestial drums or timeless vigil. Kenji found himself at awe in Aiden's recollections. Tales spoke not just of strength, but also vulnerability, where guardians wept as often as they stood firm against encroaching shadows seeking to reclaim what was lost from the past's embrace. Kenji and Aiden shared these stories well into hours. When night claimed dominion over daylight's realm, their voices a harmonious blend of echoes across ears that spoke not only history but also future promises, where their own spirits would one day be called upon to stand guard at the edge. With each tale and memory imparted between the two friends wrapped in an affectionate silence punctuated by comforting exhalations, it became clear there was no fear for tomorrow when Kenji lay asleep beneath a blanket of stars. Instead there resided trust that their hearts were aligned with those who had come before them. They felt connected to the spirits dancing in air and flickering flames like kindred souls through time, eternally woven into an unbreakable familial tapestry. As Kenji's eyelids grew heavy, a reflection of his own fatigue settling deep within every muscle fiber, where it melded with the ancient weariness that seemed to course alongside him through veins pumping silent blood, Aiden felt a similar surrender as well. Sleep was but one formidable opponent on par with time itself, and in this shared state of vulnerability, ephemeral yet eternal as nightfall's descent upon their weary forms, they found solace, not just for the tiredness that clung to them like a second skin, but also within each other's unspoken promise. No matter how long tomorrow might stretch before Kenji and Aiden, when they woke in morning's light or beneath another moonlit sky, Kenji whispered his last goodnight into the cool air that seemed to hum with ancient melodies, a final note suspended on invisible strings plucking at earthen chords deep within her lullaby for him, and Aiden crafted from shared stories as much about themselves as it was in homage to those who had once stood where they now sat. And then the world softened around Kenji, hushing into a gentle cocoon of darkness until he could no longer tell himself apart from his surroundings, where every breath became part of something greater than just air filling lungs and exhalations dissipating in cool night breezes. They were now as much an ingredient to the very essence that had always existed here, at the edge. As Kenji slipped beneath layers of comforting blank in Chapter 12 of their shared journey at the edge, Kenji and Aiden found themselves once again under a canopy of stars, whispering to each other tales woven from threads pulled straight from history's rich tapestry. As the moon hung like an unblinking eye in the sky above them, they recounted stories not merely as echoes, but as living entities that had shaped their very beings, or testament to time's immutable passage and its gifts of wisdom. Their dialogue began with tales from Kenji's homeland, where ancient ruins stood guard over secrets untold for millennia, until he stumbled upon the echoes that would become their shared lullaby, or tale about a samurai who sought honor in battles but found it within his village's quiet communal life. It was an allegory, Kenji explained to Aiden with eyes closed, as if seeing himself not just through past trials and tribulations of another time, but also the unvoiced promise he had made under that same moonlit sky to seek fulfillment in more than physical conquests or ambition. Aiden listened intently while tracing patterns on the ground with a stick until they formed an image resembling Kenji's homeland ruins, and then imagined himself standing beside him as he had once stood there in armor of spirit if not steel. He shared his own story from Japan's Edo period, a humble tea master who taught that the artistry in serving a simple bowl transcended mere performance. It became an act where every detail was imbued with intent and respect for all present, transforming into communion rather than transaction or philosophy, not unlike Kenji's, finding solace within their shared vulnerability. With each story came revelations of strength found in gentleness, honor unearned from the pursuit of power alone. Tales that wove together threads Aiden and Kenji had barely begun to understand when they first met at the edge. The night deepened as more narratives flowed between them, from a Viking's voyage across unforgiving seas not just for trade but discovery, wherein he encountered the untouchable beauty of iceberg-draped fjords that whispered tales to him alone, and an Egyptian queen who ruled with wisdom in her heart yet found herself at odds because she was seen as a woman. Or tale Kenji had felt mirroring his own struggle against societal expectations. As the night aged, so did their stories grow deeper into understanding of self through others' lived experiences across time and culture, each narrative threaded with life lessons that seemed to resonate within them both on a visceral level, lessons about balance between strength and vulnerability, ambition and community. They had become characters in these tales themselves, as much as they were the raconteurs of history's whispers into their souls. Each story was another brushstroke painting Kenji and Aiden not just with understanding, but a shared identity that stretched beyond what either could have imagined when first meeting at the edge. THR0K kenning through narratives, they found themselves reliving emotions or mix of pride in their heritage yet humility for the journey ahead. The stories were like keys unlocking parts of Kenji and Aiden that had been dormant beneath layers of dusty memories. It was as if each tale's end brought forth a new beginning within them, strengthening bonds not just to the edge, but between themselves, or mutual understanding blossoming in the fertile soil they were sowing with every shared story. And then came the stories of their own futures woven into tales from times long past and lands far away. Kenji spoke softly, his voice a mere breath on Aiden's ear, as he outlined visions that transcended just dreams or life, for himself built not upon fleeting moments but lasting impact. He envisioned paths where their shared stories could ripple through the generations to come, an echo of wisdom passed from teacher to student, samurai's honor becoming a guiding star in Kenji's heart, and Aiden finding his place within it, a community as vast as time itself. Aiden found himself lost at first on such grandiose dreaming, but soon discovered that these were not just tales spun from the silk of fantasy. Rather, they held a kernel of truth about their shared humanity and potential to shape futures yet unfurling, or promise whispered between them beneath celestial gazes. The night wove on as Kenji's stories flowered into Aiden's visions until the gentle hum of their connection, a melody unseen but felt in every shared heartbeat as it echoed through the fabric of reality they so dearly cherished, a bond that transcended epochs, from which only stories could be born anew each time one ended to begin again within them. Kenji's voice was now more a whisper than ever before, imbued with reverent silence and profound respect for this sacred space between souls where understanding bloomed like cherry blossoms in spring's tender grasp, or testament that here, amidst tales of samurai honor and ancient spirits, lay the bedrock upon which they built their future. Kenji spoke again to Aiden with a reverence befitting an elder passing down wisdom from generations past. He was no longer merely narrating stories, but rather painting horrors in time's vast canvas, or life, not for himself alone, but as the legacy of echoes resonating through history. He recounted tales where his ancestors were samurai warriors whose honor and loyalty shaped their destinies. Kenji was now a custodian of this sacred trust, to uphold these virtues in whatever path he chose before him, or beacon for Aiden, who sought not only solace but direction. As the moon hung low like an attentive guardian above them both, listening intently through silvered glass and shimmering light that danced between their intertwined fingers, Kenji divulged a vision where he would serve as a mentor to others, or samurai's spirit in modern guise. His tales of ancient Japan flowed into the streams of Aiden's consciousness. Each story was not only in homage, but also contained within it lessons that were timeless and essential for any soul seeking purpose beneath life's vast, sprawling canopy, or shared humanity connecting them to one another across divides as wide as history. Aiden listened with the rapture of a seeker on sacred ground. His heart resonated not just with Kenji's words, but also felt their weight and significance in shaping futures that were yet unwritten, or promise whispered by ancestors who had once walked paths lined with cherry blossoms as well. His mind's eye opened to possibilities where he, too, could find his place within this tapestry of shared human experience. The stories they wove together held not just memory's dust, but also seeds that promised growth and understanding in generations yet unborn, or legacy built upon tales told with a heart full of reverence. In their dialogue beneath heaven's watch, Kenji spoke gently to Aiden about honor being as much an act within the present moment as it was rooted deeply into history's soil. He urged his companion towards paths that would allow them both not just to share stories, but also impart wisdom and guidance, and extension of their shared journey. It became clear in this sacred communion, where tales flowered like petals unfurling under the sun's embrace, how Kenji's visions for himself were intrinsically tied with Aiden finding a place within them. It was as though they both sought not just to live stories, but also authored once, or shared narrative that promised growth and connection in ways neither could have imagined alone. The night wove on, each storytelling session becoming more of an odyssey into the heart's deepest desires than a simple recounting of tales. Kenji's voice was now not just his own, but also Aiden's, or harmony that transcended spoken words and echoed in every shared glance, touch, and breath between them. It became evident how their futures were intertwined like the branches of an ancient tree reaching skyward to join with one another. They would grow as a community bound by stories told not just beneath moonlit skies, but within hearts ablaze with purpose or legacy that promised echoes resonating through time's corridor, carrying whispers of their souls from the present into eternity. As dawn approached on wings soft and golden, Kenji's tales began to paint futures where they both would lead lives not just as individuals, but totherers of the night whispered secrets as old friends gather around a crackling hearth, their faces illuminated by dancing shadows and flickering flames that seemed to echo tales of ancient times. bringing with them warmth and comfort in equal measure. Kenji's voice wove through the air like music. It was calm yet carried an undercurrent of dreamy determination as he shared his latest vision, a world where stories nurtured souls just as much as they entertained minds, a realm founded on understanding, empathy, and deep-rooted connections. His tales painted pictures that blurred the lines between fantasy and reality, heroes who grew not in might but through kindness, wanderers whose wisdom was sourced from listening more than speaking, and mysteries unraveled by asking questions rather than asserting truths. As he narrated these worlds where every character played a part of the larger story, that everyone contributed towards symphony conducted in goodwill, Aiden found himself drawn deeper into this shared dreamland each time Kenji's voice dipped and soared through anecdotes of love, loss, triumph, and transformation. In these stories, Aiden saw not just a reflection, but also the outlines of his own desires to be part of something greater, a place where he could contribute more than money or time, but with hearts that resonated within every tale told beneath this very canopy of stars. Kenji's visions became mirrors for Aiden's soul. They seemed like stories waiting patiently in the wings to come into his own storyline when courage and conviction would allow him not just a part, but ownership or legacy that danced with purpose beyond their shared experiences, touching lives far wider than this circle of friends. As Kenji spun tales where characters learned from one another's diverse backgrounds, Aiden listened intently to the threads woven through these stories. He saw himself in them and felt his spirit intertwine tighter with each word spoken by their host. The heartbeats synced as they exchanged glances of understanding, or quiet nod, or a gentle touch that spoke volumes without uttering sound, conveying what words could not. In this sacred communion, where tales flowered like petals unfurling under the sun's embrace, Kenji and Aiden discovered kindred spirits in each other as well. Two souls seeking solace in stories became intertwined narratives crafted from shared visions of a brighter tomorrow. Their laughter mingled with whisperings like wind through leaves rustling against the night's calm, and their conversations flowed into murmurs that grew louder, as if they were not just sharing stories but weaving them told for a tapestry rich in hues of shared humanity. As Kenji spoke tales where people built bridges across divides with understanding rather than walls of judgment, Aiden felt his own worldview expanding. He began to see past the fences erected by fear and doubt that often clouded hearts when facing differences or unfamiliar paths in life. The stories continued late into the night until their eyes grew heavy, as if lulled not just by Kenji's voice, but also by his own heartbeat, which seemed to synchronize with Aiden's rigor, silent music that played on through shared dreamscapes painted across the canvas of imagination. As they reached out for each other's hands in a gesture born from years of friendship and mutual respect, their connection transcended words. It was an understanding as old as time itself, but freshly minted here by two souls whose stories had just begun to interlace with deeper meaning, or shared narrative that promised growth and unparalleled companionship. The warmth of the fire seemed a mere backdrop now, for Kenji and Aiden were ablaze not only with purpose, but also with an anticipation as palpable as dawn's approach. They looked towards tomorrow not just through eyes that had seen tales told in twilight hours, but within hearts awakened by the realization of how intertwined their futures could be. The stories once shared for entertainment and solace now felt like seeds planted firmly into soil, ready to sprout with care and nurturing a legacy that was set not just in memories or spoken words, but etched within every heartbeat between them as they embarked on a journey together. As the first light of dawn peeked over the horizon like golden threads weaving through night's last fabric, Kenji and Aiden found themselves at its threshold, not just to part ways for another day, but with an understanding that their storytelling. The morning air was crisp as Kenji and Aiden stepped outside their shared home into a world painted with hues of pink, orange, and yellow. It felt like they were stepping back in time to where two kindred spirits discovered life's intricate tapestry. The first light kissed the skyline tenderly, while within them both there was an unspoken excitement or buzzing energy that reverberated through their intertwined fingers and harmonized with each beat of their hearts, a symphony only they could hear, as it promised adventures yet to be lived. The journey had started in the serene countryside, where Kenji's family farm was cradled by rolling hills. Aiden's roots lay deep within bustling city life, but here, at this crossroads of contrast, they found a common ground that seemed almost celestial. The warmth and comfort provided by the hearth had been crucial to their bonding over tales told in soft whispers under stala Skeezer tradition handed down from Kenji's grandmother, who still spoke fondly of stories once shared with her father, echoes of which resonated between Aiden's memory-laden nights spent amidst the humming city. As they took their first steps towards new horizons, Chodfafair storytelling sessions taking on a life beyond mere pastime entertainment into something far deeper and more profound, Kenji realized that his friend was not just an audience but also kin in spirit to him. Aiden's laughter had often mingled with the crackle of firewood as they weaved stories richer than any soil could bear, and now it felt like these very tales were a bridge spanning across their souls, inviting them into each other's world and hearts alike. They both knew that life was not just about what lay in the future, but also cherished every fleeting moment they had towed Thoran. This understanding brought with it an unbreakable promise of companionship as timeless as history itself. Tales spun from love, dreams whispered into each other's ears under a blanket shared warmly between them. Kenji and Aiden were no longer just friends, but partners in the greatest story they could ever embark upon, a narrative that would continue to unfold with their every breath as long as life granted them its embrace, seamlessly blending tradition of old tales into stories yet unwritten for tomorrow's eager ears. Within these last hours before dawn broke once more over the sleepy town nestled between earth and sky, Kenji's fingers found their way back to Aiden with renewed purpose, a silent affirmation that no matter how far they might roam or what paths lay ahead for them both, there will always be a piece of this world where sunsets melt into the sea's embrace just as every day must end. They had learned, through shared stories and dreams penned in moonbeams on their cheeks under night's watchful eyes, that memories were not meant to fade but flourish with each telling like wildflowers after spring rain. They would always have this place of sanctuary where tales lived as long as the bonds of friendship and love. They began planning for their future together amidst stories yet untold, knowing that even if miles lay between them in physical form, a connection built on shared experiences could overcome any divide. Aiden's eyes sparkled with visions of journeys they would share, a tapestry woven not from threads alone, but the essence of their joined spirits. Kenji's voice was steady as he recounted plans for ventures both near and distant, his words painting a horizon brimming with possibilities that echoed Aiden's own aspirations. They were crafting dreams into destinies in this moment between them where the only limits seemed to be those of their combined will. The day before dawn was still alive when Kenji proposed an idea, a symbolic gesture reflective of all they had shared and a pledge for what lay ahead. Each would bring something meaningful from home that held personal significance, creating not just another keepsake, but a treasure trove imbued with the essence of their journey thus far. Aiden's eyes gleamed as he thought back to his urban life, where every artifact had its story. Kenji pondered memories encapsulated in objects too mundane for most, finding beauty and significance only between kindred souls who understood each other beyond words, or testament not just of their friendship, but the legacy they would continue weaving. As daylight began to seep through curtains filtering into Kenji's room where Aiden now lay beside, Aiden's eyes were closed as they lay side by side on their bed in Kenji's cozy room, each bathed in a cocoon of soft moonlight filtering through heavy gray curtains that swayed gently with unseen drafts or night, where the world outside paused to respect their sacred bond. The air was filled with whispers from pages yet turned as Aiden reached for Kenji's hand, fingers intertwining in a silent promise of shared adventures woven through years and miles that had kept them apart, but never truly apart at heart. Kenji, he began softly, the timbre steady like his friend's voice during their last travel tale under starlit skies. I have something I've been meaning to share with you. Kenji nodded gently as they both leaned closer in anticipation of a gift that spoke not just from Aiden, but transcended beyond mere possession. The next morning found them sitting at the breakfast table on another quiet road trip, their journey along coastal highways where sea breezes carried tales older than time itself, stories they would listen to with rapt attention and weave into their own narrative quilt of memories shared between these two souls. Kenji's gaze wandered from the waves lapping at distant cliffs and hues of graying dawn toward Aiden as he unveiled a worn leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with intricate patterns that spoke to their combined histories and individual past or keepsake they could fill together. This, Kenji said thoughtfully while the sun painted gentle strokes of gold across his friend's face as he regarded Aiden's reaction, "is from my grandmother, who passed it down before she left this world. The journal was a repository for generations, her silent witness to lives lived and unlived." Kenji spoke with reverence about its legacy. The stories within were penned by fingertips that once lovingly traced his cheek as he grew up, fingers now eagerly awaiting Aiden's turn at writing in it together. The pair embarked upon this journey not merely to traverse miles, but to delve deeper into their shared histories and personal evolutionary pilgrimage through time encapsulated within the journal's faded pages that would soon hold new entries penned by two intertwined lives, binding them even more tightly. Each stop along the way invited stories of local folklore or whispered legends on windy paths, tales to be added into their burgeoning anthology or living document, where every scribble was a testament of growth and understanding that had flourished within each other's presence, even when miles lay between. As they reached the quaint towns tucked away in verdant valleys kissed by sunshine, as if it were nature's own embrace for their blossoming friendship turned kinship or bond now solidified with shared experiences and trust beyond measure that no distance could sever. Their laughter was a melody echoing through market squares, where locals often paused to smile at the camaraderie they witnessed between two strangers who had somehow become family in each other's hearts, while travelers continued on their separate ways under twilight skies painted with pink and gold. On nights when campfires crackled amidst a backdrop of rustling leaves, Aiden would recount his urban encounters, city's heartbeat that had been so foreign to Kenji's rural upbringing yet now felt like home with the shared narrative they composed each evening. And as their journey unfolded in chapters penned not just on paper, but etched into souls, Aiden brought forth a small trinket from his city life, or broken watch that never told time rightly, but had somehow become an anchor to memories he cherished most dear. For Kenji knew the weight of stories, where each second held significance far beyond what was measured by ticking hands. Their travels became less about seeing new sights and more about unearthing layers within themselves, this discovery that every place bore a reflection back at them, not just in landscapes, but etched into their shared history like the rings of an ancient oak telling tales older than time itself, where two friends had become part of its legacy. As they continued to traverse this journey together, Kenji and Aiden found solace under starlit canopies or sanctuary for nights spent recounting past escapades that danced like shadows around campfires, as if the universe conspired in their favor with each shared moment of quietude. The road became a metron as they settled by the fire that night. Sharing stories became an act older than themselves, or tradition passed down through generations to bridge minds in harmony with nature's own rhythms. The campfire crackled and popped like ancient storytellers reciting legends under a moonlit sky as Kenji leaned forward eagerly on his elbows, absorbing Aiden's tales of the city or place once so alien yet now an integral part of their shared history. Aiden spoke softly about forgotten alleys where shadows danced with light and faces where masks worn at every turn. He described a metropolis pulsating to its own beat, much like Kenji's heart had done when they first met, each city beating in unison as one. The two friends reminisced over shared laughter that seemed lost but now echoed within them with each recounting of adventures and misadventures alike, their journey through the concrete jungles becoming a cherished memory, imprinted on Kenji's heart like indelible ink. As Aiden spoke about his time navigating these urban mazes, testament to human resilience amidst chaos and beauty intermingled, Kenji felt himself embracing the unfamiliar with each tale, akin to how he had once welcomed Kenji into this world of endless discovery. They laughed about moments where time itself seemed irrelevant in their shared experiences, the broken watch no longer just an artifact, but now emblematic of life's transient nature and its ability to mend through memories etched not by hands, but heartbeats. Their conversation meandered like a river flowing from source to sea. It touched upon the stars that had guided Kenji's ancestors across oceans, now watchful guardians in their nightly adventures under shared skies. They spoke of constellations as maps charting courses not just through physical realms but emotional landscapes or journey within themselves, where each star told a story untold by timepieces or clocks. Ends. Through tales spun from threads both mundane and magical, Aiden painted pictures of lives intertwined like roots beneath ancient soil. The stories were vessels for wisdom as old as earth itself, while new lessons blossomed within Kenji's mind, or garden tended by words that watered seeds sown in youthful curiosity. The tales became mirrors reflecting not just their past, but also possibilities, echoes of laughter and tears resonating through the ages like harmonies played on ethereal strings. As dawn crept upon them with fingers light as moths, wings against fabric softened by night air, Kenji felt a sense of gratitude for Aiden's companionship that had transcended mere friendship to become an anchor in life's unpredictable seas. They shared dreams woven from the strands of day and night, finding solace not only outside under open skies, but within their intertwined spirits, where each breath felt as if it carried them together through time itself. A journey that began with two friends at odds in thought, yet united by an invisible thread spun between souls. Their stories were now more than mere words, they became the very essence of connection, allowing Kenji to see his world from perspectives not just within but beyond its borders. A journey that began with two friends sharing tales beneath stolid canopies and culminated in an understanding deeper than they had ever known before. And as Aiden's stories wove around the campfire's flames, he gifted Kenji a sense of belonging or feeling where every heartbeat resonated between them like drum circles echoing through time itself. Their journey together becoming not just about traversing landscapes, but navigating hearts. The next day promised new horizons as they packed memories alongside the tangible tokens that had shaped and shared parts of themselves, or testament to journeys undertaken hand in hand, where every experience, whether steeped in sorrow or joy, contributed chapters to as dawn painted its golden hues across a world they both knew so well yet had seen through each other's eyes. Kenji and Aiden found themselves standing on an untouched shore of discovery, a place where sea met sky in harmonious blend, but promised to lead them into the heartland. They were no longer just friends who shared tales beneath starlit canopies. They became companions whose souls danced together like a well-rehearsed symphony reaching its crescendo before settling back into quieter melodies for reflection and growth. Kenji took the lead today, with Aiden following suit, as if their steps were guided by an unseen hand that always seemed to find them where they needed to go, even when the path was shrouded in mist or swallowed up by shifting sands of uncertainty. They walked side by side along narrow trails, winding through whispering forests and over gentle hills, rolling towards a valley embraced like an open palm inviting discovery within its depths. As they ventured further, Kenji would pause now and then to share with Aiden stories from his past, tales of ancestors who braved stormy seas or wanderers whose paths crossed by mere twists of fate under similar canopies that sheltered them today. With each tale, the horizon before their eyes expanded beyond geographical boundaries into realms untouched and cultures unfathomed, until Moonlight, peering through a kaleidoscope, where every term revealed patterns unique to Kenji's lineage or Aiden's heritage, yet somehow interlocked in perfect harmony. Aiden listened, his heart resonating with the cadence of each story told by Kenji. He felt as if they were passing keys that unlocked doors within himself, portals leading not only through history, but into understanding and acceptance beyond what either had known before their journey began together. The stories became bridges between pasts and present, forging connections across time itself like an intricate tapestry of experiences where every thread represented a shared heartbeat or breath in unison with the world around them as it undulated through cycles of change from sunrise to sunset, then back again, or dance they had become part of. Their dialogue often meandered into philosophical musings and reflections on life's grand tapestry, discussing notions such as fate versus free will, or how the essence of being is interwoven with every action taken upon this earthly plane or place, where all things are connected by invisible threads spun from intention to outcome. They would sit beneath ancient trees, whose roots had nurtured countless generations before them, pondering questions that seemed simple at first but unfolded into complex dialogues about existence and the soul's journey through life's seasons of change. Each query explored, leading deeper still down paths shrouded in misty valleys or illuminated by sunbeams piercing dense foliage overhead. Today, as they approached a clearing where an old banyan tree stood sentinel over generations past and yet to Khmer, place that seemed almost sacred for holding memories imprinted in the very heart of nature itself, Kenji shared with Aiden stories about how his grandmother used to recite verses from her favorite poem beneath its canopy when he was a child, inspiring him not only by words but through their resonance within his own spirit. And so too did this place evoke in Aidan memories of elders who had shared tales beside warm fires during long winter evenings or time, where stories were currency for survival and wisdom as much needed sustenance to endure life's coldest seasons alongside kinship kept strong through the hearth. Their conversation flowed seamlessly between reflections on nature's beauty, heritage treasured like jewels in a chest of memories that they both carried close even as it was shared with one animal, like two halves joined by an unbreakable bond forged through journeys navigated hand in hand. Kenji spoke now about how understanding his roots had brought him closer not just to himself but also deeper into Aiden's world. He found that their differences were merely contrasting colors in a grand spectrum where every hue was vital and unique, yet together they painted the most beautiful of landscapes, or mosaic born from individual pieces finding strength through unity. As daylight began to wane on this new horizon marked by shared understanding between two once divergent souls, Kenji felt a sense of gratitude that had been growing within him like vines reaching towards sunlight, intertwining his being with Aiden's in ways he as the first light hinted at overcoming nighttime darkness. They spoke about how their shared experiences in different terrains from arid deserts to lush valleys had taught them resilience and adaptability, qualities that were not only essential for navigating landscapes, but also life's unpredictable twists. Kenji recounted the tales of his ancestors who traversed similar paths, where water was both a scarce treasure and an oasis of vitality, or dichotomy as profound in nature as it is within their bonding heartbeats now synced to one another's every pulse. They delved into conversations about the myriad ways communities had come together, forming tight-knit bonds that were essential for weathering through storm and drought alike, bonds not unlike those they found in each other's arms as night turned to day. The stories told by their elders spoke of unity, how disparate individuals could stand shoulder to shoulder against a tempest, finding strength where solitude would have left them fearful or alone. Aiden thought about the ways his culture had evolved, but remained rooted in those same communal values way they came together not just for celebrations of harvests and seasons changed, but also times when sorrow needed to be shared, like burdens that, once lifted as one, could no longer weigh down their spirits. Kenji related these reflections back into Aiden's life experiences with his own people, finding parallels in the warm gatherings at home where laughter mingled effortlessly with tears and stories of past generations were passed like torches to illuminate present life's fireside tales that provided guidance as much for navigating personal growth as they did cultural identity. Within their shared reverie, Aiden pondered the ways in which his understanding had deepened not only about Kenji's heritage, but also of humanity's intricate tapestry, a realization punctuated by whispers between them that danced like shadows against an ancient moon. Their dialogue seamlessly wove through a recognition of how all cultures, no matter their origins or differences in custom, carried the same essence of humanity's longing for connection and understanding, universal desire to be heard, seen, felt, and loved unconditionally as part of something greater. The night seemed almost sentient, holding them close with a protective embrace that promised safekeeping through dreams, and the quiet growth they found themselves in each other's presence now fostering an interweaving of lives where once there was only anticipation for what might come to be as their friendship transcended into something more profound. Through gentle recollections, Aiden learned about Kenji's journey through adolescence and the struggles he faced reconciling his biracial identity within a community that often viewed him with curiosity or skepticism, an experience in stark contrast to how embraced tradition had been for him. This understanding brought forth an awareness of Aiden's own path, which led through landscapes painted not just by nature, but also the evolving hues of societal acceptance and personal discovery, a journey that was punctuated with moments where he felt most alive when sharing his soul's palette. Kenji shared tales about how every individual in their ancestry had contributed to its colorful history, imbuing life lessons into the very ground they walked up, and lessons of embracing one's heritage and knowing that identity is not a single drop but an ocean where each wave brings forth new strength. Aiden realized he too carried such waves within him, his own experiences shaping uniquely vibrant reflections born from understanding who came before, as well as the self-reflection at this precise moment in time, or confluence of past and present, that flowed like rivers meeting a sea with every shared memory. As dawn approached to reclaim its throne over their campfire world, they acknowledged how each sunrise heralded new beginnings, while the remnants of night's Kenji's voice had been gentle and steady like the flow of water in their village well, constant yet adaptable, echoing tales not just of successes, but also resilience through challenges, faced with graceful determination. There was a sense that Aiden could almost touch these stories as they resonated within him. Each word from Kenji's lips seemed to carry the weight and wisdom of generations before them, their struggles, triumphs, loves lost at sea or in battlefields long forgotten but always remembered. As night deepened into a velvet blanket stretched across all that could not be seen with eyes wide open yet felt deeply within the spirit's knowing gaze, Aiden pondered upon his own reflection against this backdrop of ancestral legacy, realizing he was both an echo and creation in Kenji's tales. With each story shared around their campfire world, where history blurred into reality as much as it did with dreaming under the vast cosmos above them, Aiden's thoughts turned toward his own journey through life's landscapes colored by nature, but also shaded and highlighted in human experience, set his understanding of self-reflection becoming more pronounced. The fire had begun to wane when Kenji paused for a deep breath drawn from years spent learning the language whispered among leaves, shared songs hummed during laborious days planting seeds that would become sustenance and tradition. It was an art form passed down through generations of hands gnawed by soil but still capable of crafting beauty. The warmth flickered within Aiden as Kenji spoke. Their connection to the earth around them, rooted in ancestral lands, now felt even closer with each shared memory. Kenji continued weaving narratives spun from threads gathered during days spent under open skies and nights wrapped up against biting cold. Tales of times when traditions had been held sacred like family jewels, to be treasured above all else. A time where community was not just living together, but thriving within the embrace of shared existence. Aiden felt himself sway with Kenji's stories, his heartbeat matching rhythms from an era when kinship and legacy were intertwined inseparably as one, like threads knitting a tapestry that cloaked their heritage throughout history's march forward into the present day. He thought of how identity was not merely about singular lines drawn along race or culture, but rather vibrant waves flowing through time's fabric, every ancestor adding to its richness and depth as though they were all at once a part of his story yet apart from it too, each wave upon the ocean carrying new strength. The night deepened further into introspection for Aiden, who found himself reflecting not just on stories, but also considering actions he could take, how to honor this confluence and blend past with present in a way that would ripple forward towards future generations, an inheritance of understanding rather than mere bloodline. There was comfort knowing the ancestral voices whispered through Kenji's tales were not distant echoes but felt as alive within him, guiding his hand to write stories yet untold with truth and authenticity drawn from their shared history, a legacy that he could carry forth himself into whatever dawn might break upon them. As the first light of morning began filtering through wisps of clouds parting for brief moments above before retreating once again, Aiden understood this was not merely an end to night but also another beginning, one wherein seeds sown by his own hands could bloom into realities yet unknown, blossoming identities shaped from both the soil beneath their feet and a rich lineage of stories. Kenji's tales had been more than mere words spoken during this campfire journey through generational wisdom. They were now part of Aiden's very being, a confluence that flowed like rivers meeting in ocean with every shared memory, as though he too was not just listening but learning to sing his own ancestral psalm. They both knew the night's end would soon beckon forth a new day, one chapter continuation. As their dialogue quieted into a comfortable silence, Aiden's eyes rested on the horizon where light began touching upon the dark earth. He took Kenji's hand in his own and looked back at him with appreciation for these shared stories that were both comfort and compass now guiding his path as well. Kenji smiled softly, a twinkle of pride reflective not just from Aiden's gratitude but also the fulfillment he felt knowing their legacy would continue through another generation, a testament to life's perpetual cycle where endings are beginnings and knowledge passes like whispers in time. Aiden leaned forward, his voice a gentle murmur as it danced with Kenji's tales of olden days when the land was young under their ancestors' watchful eyes. He spoke not just to hear, but felt compelled by an unseen force urging him to connect deeper into this lineage and honor its memory through storytelling, a craft he had always admired in Kenji yet never truly pursued himself until now. Kenji-san, Aiden began timidly as the morning sun crested higher above them. I wish not just to listen, but become part of this legacy you carry. He paused for a heartbeat, gathering courage that seemed to echo in his own chest like an ancestral drum ready to beat once more into existence through him. Kenji's eyes crinkled with warmth and amusement at Aiden's earnestness. You already are part of our legacy, he said gently, knowing the young man had always possessed a kindred spirit for their stories, or quiet soul who harbored respect, but Sub-Zero felt unsure how to bridge into sharing them himself. I seek not just knowledge from these tales you tell me. I wish to add my own voice so our children and yours may hear the echoes of this history. Aiden spoke, his resolve solidifying with each word that escaped him as if he were etching it in stone for all time, a bridge between past wisdom and future dreams. Kenji nodded thoughtfully. To write is to share life's essence through the veins of a story, Kenji mused, his mind's eye traveling back generations where their ancestors too had woven tales that bridged time itself, a continuous thread spun from shared experiences and hopes for posterity. Aiden looked up with newfound determination. Then let us start this journey together, he declared as the sun climbed higher, a promise of light to illuminate his path ahead. Kenji extended an open palm invitingly. Aiden accepted it willingly, a pact sealed between two hearts and souls seeking harmony with their roots. Within that momentous handshake was embedded the understanding that as they walked away from this campfire circle of whispers, a new chapter in both lives would begin to unfurl, one where Aiden's pen danced not just on paper, but also wove into his being an unbreakable bond with past and future kin alike. Their journey continued under the watchful gaze of their ancestors as they delved deeper into Kenji's chronicles, each story a stepping stone towards Aiden's own revelation, a realization that he was no longer just an observer, but became part of this ever-flowing stream where tales and souls merged. They arrived at the heartland by evening, when shadows grew long across their feet like silent sentinels marking time's passage. Aiden, with a diary in hand, now feeling lighter than air, as if he could lift it solely on his determination to honor tradition and create anew underneath the vast expanse of Starcer tapestry woven from countless fireside yarns that had been told before this one. Beneath Kenji's watchful eye, Aiden penned down a tale inspired by their shared heritage, his hand guided more by instinct than skill as he let go as Aiden's pen glided across the fresh parchment with ease. He felt an unparalleled connection to his lineage, a bond transcending time itself, as if each word brought him closer to understanding himself and wherein lies true strength. The night was mildly cooling underneath their campfire's flickering embrace, the air carrying only whispers of ancestral echoes that had danced around this sacred space long before them, now entrusted in Aiden's hands as he continued to narrate an untold legacy. The stories they shared were not just tales, but lifelines, a testament passed through generations, which carried the wisdom and trials of those who came before him. With each chapter that unfolded beneath Kenji's watchful eyes, Aiden realized his role was no longer to solely listen or observe. He became an integral thread in this continuum wherein every generation is both teacher and student, a perpetual homage to the past while simultaneously nurturing the future. One particular evening, as stars dotted the sky like jewels, Kenji unfolded tales of ancient rituals that had been long forgotten, but were now being remembered through Aiden's recounting, each story resonating with power and reverence within his core. These ancestral stories spun intricate webs around them both, binding their spirits to the earth beneath footprints worn into history by generations before, all while guiding those who followed towards an awakening of tradition in modern forms that would honor the past without shackling it with antiquity's heavy chains. As dawn approached on this special night full of reflection and connection to their roots, Aiden felt a profound sense of peaceful purpose coursing through his veins, an unspoken promise from ancestors who had watched over them as they shared these chronicles by the firelight's last flicker. It was then that he decided upon one final act before departing for distant lands and future endeavors, a tribute to their heritage crafted not just in words but through an artful composition of elements cherished throughout his lineage's history, each symbol imbued with its own significance as part of the sacred narrative. In this heartland where time seemed suspended within layers of folklore and truth, Aiden sought solace from Kenji to discuss a lasting homage that would stand in place of their shared firelit conversations, one born not just out of love for his family's customs, but as an invitation extended across lands afar where others might continue the legacy. He spoke with earnest fervor, describing how he envisioned this tribute, a living mosaic that would encapsulate elements like ancestral motifs in fabric and metalwork interwoven into modern attire, traditional melodies blended seamlessly within contemporary soundscapes, enduring pottery techniques reimagined for urban dwellings, all while maintaining the essence of their culture's heartbeat. Kenji listened intently, his eyes reflecting pride and a quiet wisdom as he nodded along, recognizing in Aiden not just an inheritor, but also a visionary who saw beyond boundaries that might have once confined them to mere whispers by the campfire's edge. With gentle encouragement from Kenji's approval, Aiden felt empowered and ready, his soul alight with determination as he outlined plans for collaborations with artisans near their journey's end. Inviting fresh Perspect 01/22 as the day of parting drew closer like an unwavering shadow at sunset, Aiden's narrative took on a life beyond paper. The tales that had once been confined to whispered secrets now transcended into tangible forms, from delicate beadwork embellishing everyday accessories for the young and old alike in distant lands where their stories could unfold anew, unbound by geography yet deeply rooted within tradition. With each sunrise that peeked through Kenji's window pane one final time before he too journeyed beyond familiar horizons, Aiden felt a mixture of gratitude for the gift of this shared bond and eagerness to honor it with his endeavors abroad, where artisans would carry forward their legacies in threads interwoven through foreign fabrics. These acts of cultural exchange were not just about preserving tradition, but also allowing its evolution, a testament that history was alive within the hearts beating across time and space. As Aiden packed his belongings, each with purposeful intentionality infused into their selection from this journey's end, he carried more than mere material. Aiden's final day was one of reflection and quiet anticipation as he traversed through memories that had become a part of his very essence. Each step across Kenji's threshold, beneath their last shared gaze overlooking distant mountains, felt like closing the book on an era. The city streets were now just echoes in Aiden's mind. They resonated with laughter and dreams once interlaced but no longer his own to share daily within those familiar walls that had stood witness to a friendship forged through trials of loss as much as triumph, where the hum of life outside was both an inspiration and solace. As Kenji's departure became imminent with each sunset painting deeper shades into their shared skyline, Aiden found himself seated on a solitary park bench under knee 02/22. The ancient oak before him seemed to embody the strength of his bond and connection that extended routes beyond mere companionship. It had been an unspoken pact forged here years ago, among whispers in nature's ear, beneath this very canopy where they first discovered their shared love for crafting narratives out of thread and stone as children before life steered them towards paths lined with the hues of uncertainty that often accompany loss. Now he allowed himself a smile at Kenji's departure, not one laced solely in sadness, but rather gratitude, knowing their friendship had been sculpted through shared resilience and understanding which would carry him forward into unknown chapters ahead. Aiden closed his eyes. The weight of memories seemed to dissolve with each breath taken under this venerable tree's shade, as if nature itself lent its strength in quiet solidarity, acknowledging their goodbye beneath boughs heavy with history and untold tales nestled among leaves. The sun dipped low on the horizon when Aiden finally emerged from his reverie to stand before Kenji's doorstep. A threshold between worlds, he had crossed time after time in search of shared purpose, now marking an end as much as it did any beginning, where each handshake and embrace became both epilogue and prelude. He paused on the step. His heart felt like parchment bearing inscriptions from a lifetime lived between hearts that beat with synchronous courage in face of life's relentless tide. Kenji's eyes now mirrored pools reflecting resolve as much for him as any other journeyer, as their farewell was punctuated by laughter and the warmth of shared human connection transcending mere friendship to touch something indescribably profound within them both. Aiden felt a sense of completion, not an end, but rather continuation in another guise that would carry Kenji's legacy forward. He pondered how his craft had become more than just the preservation of tradition. It was now about threading these cultural motifs into new fabrics, where each pattern and stitch told stories as vibrant today, if not brighter with possibility for what lay beyond their shared journey's end. Their final evening together unfolded beneath a sky awash in twilight hues. Aidan felt the comfort of knowing that even though they would no longer walk these paths hand in hand through Alice lined with history, his craft was now an extension of their shared experiences, weaving tales into textiles, where every bead and thread held echoes of laughter, whispers in secret alcoves as night embraced the world around them. The city lights blinked like stars that had descended to touch upon earthly soil, while Aidan felt his soul alight with determination, for he was not just a storyteller, but also an ambassador of tradition, through trade and crafts, inviting others into their narrative tapestry, where each piece bore the weight of stories passed from lips that had found solace in artistry. The thought brought him to Kenji's eyes brimming with pride for his journey ahead. He could see himself as an integral part within a grander mosaic, one not fixed by distance or geography, but bound together through shared essence and purpose which no horizon barrier can sever completely from the heart's intent. With Kenji's departure imminent and their time in this city drawing to its natural close like chapters of a book eagerly awaited, Aidan felt an invigorating sense that he was ready, not just for what lay before him, but also with his craft, as it would now serve across continents. He had planned meticulously. Each item created within the shared studio space beneath Kenji's windowpane held a purpose in this unfolding journey of cultural exchange, where artisans, and as Aidan sat quietly beneath the windowpane of Kenji's small studio apartment in Tokyo's bustling district, his mind wandered to the myriad possibilities that lay ahead like stars waiting for nightfall. The city had been an endless source of inspiration and learning, its people rich with stories soaked into every alleyway pebble worn by countless feet. Now was their time to share these narratives, weaving them through trade where crafts were not mere objects but conduits of culture across the globe. Chapter 24. Aidan's heart and hands in harmony with Kenji's legacy. The first piece that had captured his hands was a delicate porcelain vase, its form reminiscent of cherry blossoms blooming defiantly against the cold touch of winter. This creation embodied hope, something Aidan held dear as he prepared to leave this city behind and journey forth with Kenji's legacy in his care. With each stroke that kissed clay, stories were told without words, a silent invocation for understanding amidst diverse lands where artisans thrived on the belief of shared humanity through craftsmanship. Kenji had often spoken about how their small shop was more than just walls lined with goods. It represented a bridge between worlds, bringing together people and stories from different walks of life to exchange smiles over handcrafted treasures that whispered tales of homelands afar. As Aidan touched the smooth texture under his fingers, he felt not only Kenji's pride but also an echoing sense of duty, a commitment to ensure their craft thrived beyond Tokyo's embrace and into foreign soils where hearts yearned for connection through objects that held more than monetary value. Their last evening together was spent in quiet conversation, reflecting on the journey they had shared since meeting years ago at an international artisan conference back home before Kenji decided to move abroad temporarily. Their lives became interwoven like threads of silk, vibrant and strong despite being pulled from different corners of their respective worlds. As Aidan looked out into the night, he saw not just a city but also landscapes that would soon become part of his own story as an ambassador for tradition through trade. Kenji's teachings had always been about more than technique. They were lessons on how to listen with one's hands and heart while imparting pieces birthed from the soul into existence. Objects meant not just to be admired, but experienced, each bearing unique emotional fingerprint that would resonate across oceans. Aidan had learned this art of listening amidst his time spent beside Kenji's side at workshops and gatherings where local crafters shared their heritage with wide-eyed wonder in the presence of foreigners who came seeking inspiration, knowledge, or a connection to something authentic beyond superficial trinkets sold for transient pleasure. The next chapter was written not on paper, but within Aidan's heart, as he felt ready, prepared and willing to share their stories with strangers soon becoming friends through shared experiences around delicate ceramics, vibrant tapestries woven from tales of distant lands where colors spoke louder than words. Their craft shop would continue under Kenji's name until the day came when Aiden had a space in another city to call his own. Yet he knew that with each piece sold and told through hands-on interaction, their narrative as artisans promoting cultural exchange was expanding beyond Tokyo's boundaries. Amidst this thought of continuance rather than conclusion, Kenji gifted Aiden a small wooden box containing handwritten notes from people they had touched, expressions in various languages that felt like warmth seeping into his bones as he read them back beneath the dimming glow of Tokyo's nightlight. Their journey was not at an end but branching out, reaching for horizons where craftsmanship could foster understanding and peace one piece at a time, across continents that separated their homelands yet united by shared human experiences reflected through artistry in the hands of dedicated individuals like himself. The finality of this chapter's tale came not with an ending but anticipation. For Aiden, every departure from Tokyo was another beginning as he stepped into a world where his role would extend across borders to keep Kenji's legacy alive and resonant within hearts that appreciated the depth behind simple objects. As nightly tides of change swept away familiar faces and whisper promises along cobblestone streets echoing with bygone tales, Aiden felt each heartbeat synchronize, his own pulsing in tan as Aiden's gaze lingered on Tokyo nightlight reflections for a moment longer before closing his eyes. He let himself be wrapped in thoughts of Kenji and their shared journey through cultural craftsmanship or voyage that had now transcended the bustling cityscapes. The next chapter commenced with Aiden stepping out into an unfamiliar yet inviting evening air as if drawn by a string to destinations unknown, guided only by memories and dreams of Kenji's teachings. Understanding that continuity was the essence of their story, a tale not bound by geography but woven with shared human experiences, through artistry Aiden found himself at an ancient marketplace in Kyoto where craftsmanship had been celebrated for centuries. The air here hummed differently. It whispered stories etched into woodwork, tales that lived within the curves of pottery and breathed life into textiles dyed with natural pigments handed down through generations. Aiden's hands remembered Kenji's touch on rough-hewn cedar. Feeling its grain as if it were his own skin or sensation, he sought to recapture in Kyoto and find a new medium of expression that resonated with the locals while echoing their traditions. As Aiden strolled through narrow alleys lined with shops showcasing masterful artisans, each piece seemed like an invitation for him to delve deeper into his crafts, solar, silent nod from Kenji encouraging progression and exploration beyond Tokyo's influence. In a small workshop, hidden away behind traditional paper screens adorned with cherry blossoms in springtime, Aiden met Hiroshi, an elderly potter whose hands moved like water over clay as if he could coax the very earth to yield its secrets. There was no need for words. Gestures and shared purpose created a bond between them, a continuation of Kenji's legacy in form yet unique to Aiden's touch and perspective, which had been sculpted by experiences distinct from his mentor's own journey through time. Their conversations flowed with the rhythm of pottery wheels turning. They spoke not only about technique but also shared tales that wove personal histories into each piece. Aiden helped shape a mosaic narrative where every touch, pinch, and fold imbued stories in earthenware. Hiroshi saw beyond the surface to understand his role as a keeper of tradition while embracing innovation just as Kenji had done for him years ago. When they first met under Tokyo's neon lights, their mentorship cycle renewed with each passing generation, carrying forward wisdom that transcended time and place. As the Japanese sun began to dip below the horizon on his second day in Kyoto, Aiden found himself at a riverside gallery where local artisans displayed their work for travelers like him seeking connections between cultures through craftsmanship or confluence of souls united by purpose and creativity. Here was an opportunity to extend Kenji's narrative beyond his own city, allowing the stories told in woodwork, metal, fabric, or ceramic to speak for themselves across continents, yet linked together as one through shared human expression found only within artistry's embrace. The gallery buzzed with energy, a collective heartbeat of craftspeople who had journeyed from far and wide, each carrying their individual threads into the cultural tapestry that was being woven before Aiden's eyes. He felt a kinship not just to Kenji, but also to these artisans whose hands shaped materials as if they were conduits for history itself, or a lineage of creators like himself who sought harmony between form, function, and narrative within their work that transcended mere objects into vessels of legacy. Together with Hiroshi's wisdom and the gallery community's supportive camaraderie, Aiden crafted a piece inspired by both his mentor Kenji and this newfound sense of place, or wooden sculpture representing hands in unity that transcended geographical boundaries yet remained firmly grounded within cultural essence. Each chip shaped from cedar bore witness to the journey they shared. Each groove told tales not just about Aiden's path, but also reflected Kyoto's rich history and artisanship, or symbol of continuity that promised a bridge between their homelands, where distance was merely an illusion when it came to human connection through cultural craftsmanship. As the evening settled into nightfall with stars twinkling in silent applause for Aiden's creation and his dedication, as Aiden carved deeper into his cedar wood sculpture under Hiroshi's watchful eye, he felt as if each stroke was a conversation between past and present, dialogue that transcended language itself to speak of unity in diversity. The gallery had become not just a space where art met eyes, but one where time seemed suspended. Here the air carried whispers from centuries ago, when woodworkers like his ancestors first laid hands on their chosen medium, interpreting it with reverence and skill that was palpable even to those who could only admire in silence. Hiroshi observed Aiden's progress each day after school hours, standing beside the grand sculpture as if guarding a sacred relic of cultural exchange, varied embodiment of hands joined together across continents and generations. His gentle guidance was not just instruction, but also wisdom passed down through years spent amidst Kyoto's most profound artisans. Aiden had always known there were depths to his craft that he could only begin to explore under Hiroshi's tutelage, or journey of growth and self-discovery. One afternoon, as the sun played hide and seek with clouds painting pastels across the sky before retreating beyond its golden hour, Aiden discovered a forgotten compartment within his cedar sculpture, hidden beneath layers of history and wood-grain patterns. Inside lay an old scroll delicately bound by silk, a relic seemingly untouched for ages, and yet resonant with stories that had shaped the lives around it before he was born, tales etched into every fiber, like calligraphy on canvas. With Hiroshi's approval to explore this serendipitous discovery within his work of art without fear or judgment, Aiden delicately unfurled the scroll under soft studio lights that seemed as much a part of Kyoto's tradition now as they were in its past glory days, or time when every surface was imbued with purpose and story. The parchment crackled like dry leaves beneath his fingers. He read tales of samurai honor, emperors' rise and fall, poets who whispered to the wind their souls' yearnings into hakis that became more than words. They were prayers set free upon paper wings by ink. Aiden felt as if Kyoto itself was speaking through time. Every narrative held a lesson of resilience and adaptation, an understanding that artistry bore the capacity to outlive even stone monuments weathered down into earth's embrace. Your testament whispered from cedar bark, echoing within his sculpture and heart. The scroll unveiled secrets about Kyoto, not just as a geographical place, but also a spirit, where every artisan contributed strokes to the canvas of continuity that painted history in wood and stone across generations. It was here Aiden found himself woven into this tapestry with threads spun from his own experiences, their strengths intertwined. As dusk approached and stars began their nightly ballet, Hiroshi shared tales of Kyoto's ancient woodworkers who had once used the same cedar that now gifted Aiden's hands to shape artistry. These craftspeople were warriors with mallets as swords. They fought against erasure and time itself. Their legacy was not merely in their creations, but also embedded within every carved groove, a silent nod across centuries urging the new generation forward on its path of cultural perpetuity. Aiden's sculpture now stood complete under Hiroshi's encouraging gaze, a wooden emblem of unity that was an homage to Kenji and his artistic lineage, while embracing a shared experience with international craftspeople he had befriended in the gallery community. The piece echoed Kyoto's narrative through its form, each notch representing years past yet still holding promise for tomorrow's tale, a living artifact that was more than an object, but also a vessel of connection across time and space. It told stories without words about hands meeting halfway between the East Sea waves to his sun-kissed shores. As Aiden placed protective lacquer over his creation, He understood now with newfound clarity his art was not just wood but also a living dialogue, where cultures spoke in silent harmony through shared endeavors and mutual respect for tradition. It bridged worlds divided by oceanic expanses to form an unbreakable bond of communal spirit. The sculpture, with its hands embracing each other as if partaking in eternal greetings or farewells whisper across continents before time had given them voice, it was his personal in Chapter 27 of Aiden's journey through wood and memory to form a bridge between worlds. He found himself reflecting on his growth as an artist within this meditative chapter that followed. Aiden stood silently in front of the easel, where vibrant hues had been applied with tender care. It was here, under these colors palette inspired by sunsets along Kyoto's riverbanks and dawn's first light over Hiroshi's seaside village, that Aiden began to capture not just sights, but the essence of time itself, weaving together past and present into one. The painting before him was an intricate narrative in color gradients. It blossomed from his brush like a lotus rising each morning above still waters lapping gently on shores both near and far away, are testament to the unity he had found within diversity, echoed through strokes that danced between cultures. The scent of fresh lacquer filled the room as Aiden prepared his workshop for another creation. This time it was not a piece meant only for viewers' eyes, but an object destined to touch many hands, with stories, untold yet deeply felt, crafted from heartwood harvested under Kyoto's ancient boughs and shaped by the warmth of Hiroshi's spirit. The wood seemed almost alive beneath his tools as he carved away at its slowly or silent conversation between artisan souls across time, that had begun with Kenji, continued through Aiden, now finding expression in this wooden emblem destined to stand proudly among the gallery walls of Kyoto and Hiroshi's village. As days melded into nights without distinction, under seasonal skies, his hands moved methodically along curves that were guided by memorist laughter shared with Kenji at their first exhibition in Tokyo, or evenings spent discussing technique over sake as the city lights flickered like distant stars. The wood absorbed every moment of Aiden's toil and dedication, growing not just larger but more complete under his guidance. It was transforming from a simple block into something transcendent, or manifest signifier that held within its fibers both history's echoes and whispers for the future. Amidst these reflections of artistry interlaced with cultural reverence, Aiden often found himself wandering along riverbanks or quiet paths where nature's own forms spoke to him, or symbiotic dialogue between artist and muse that had been nurtured by countless sunsets watched over Kyoto's cherry blossoms. The whispers of history guided his chisel, shaping the wood into a representation not just of physical form, but also symbolic unity. It seemed to hold within its grain an entire world or microcosm, where every knot and swirl told stories without words about journeys undertaken by hands that had known each other only through shared reverence for their craft. The days stretched into a mosaic of experiences, with Aiden's artwork becoming increasingly intertwined with the pulse of life around him, a living artifact resonant not just within galleries but also in marketplaces and homes where stories flow as freely as rivers to seaward horizons. His sculpture began taking shape beneath his hands. Two figures, their arms embracing, firm yet gentle, like waves meeting upon the shore, a union of East Sea's depth with sun-kissed shores that transcended geographical boundaries and time itself, a living greeting between continents where cultures had always met in shared human spirit. As he sealed his latest work, Aiden recognized it not as an end, but as a new beginning. The protective lacquer was more than just preservation for him to apply, also felt like encapsulating time within its glossy sheener vessel, carrying tales of communal endeavor and respect that span oceans. The sculpture, in his mind's eye now complete, before it took form under skilled hands, seemed as if ready to whisper secrets across continents with every protective coat. The eternal greetings or farewells shared by parting friends were immortalized within its embrace, or constant conversation between cultures. The journey of this wooden creation from raw material into a cherished artifact continued as Aiden wrapped his piece, and then another with wax, to ensure longevity, while the world outside hummed in oblivion, unaware that each one was more than wood but rather an ongoing dialogue between cultures. As he added final touches under Tokyo's glowing skyline or Kyoto's lanterlit streets, his in Chapter 28 of Aiden's journey as an artisan and cultural ambassador through his sculptures We find him in a quiet corner within Tokyo's bustling Tsukiji fish market during early morning hours, when time seemed to slow down just enough for the world outside to take notice. The air was filled with the heady scent of fresh seafood mingled with Aiden's own anticipation as he prepared his tools or humble set, each one a familiar extension of himself, and an echo from generations before him who had worked their craft in this very place where East met West. Amidst the market's cacophony of vendors hawking exotic mackerel to eager tourists savoring tuna sashimi, Aiden felt a profound sense of purpose as he selected wood from his modest workshop or cherished Japanese cedar that bore witness to centuries. This particular piece had journeyed far beyond the reach of Tokyo's embrace and into Aiden's hands, through tales swirling in trade winds across oceans, finding a home where its spirit could resonate once more with cultural significance. With each stroke of his chisel, against the wood under the watchful gaze of ancient secure trees that seemed to stand sentinel over him and time itself, Aiden felt he was carving out not just an artifact, but a bridge between worlds or tangible representation of unity in diversity. The sculpture began taking form as if it had always been meant for his hands. The wood yielded effortlessly beneath skilled craftsmanship that bore testament to knowledge passed down through time, whispering ancestral secrets from one artisan's touch to another's own shaping fingers. As Aiden chiseled out a figure of a woman whose eyes seemed imbued with the wisdom and serenity found only in those who had seen many seasons come full circle, he was reminded that his work did not merely serve as decoration but stood as silent ambassadors to shared human experiences. Each contour on her face carried stories, from distant lands her smile suggesting a greeting between continents, and sorrow for the separation of loved ones who had long since passed beyond sight yet remained ever present in memory's embrace within his artwork's soulful gaze. The woman seemed to come alive beneath Aiden's hands, her silhouette flowing like water into forms that spoke not only with beauty, but also a universal language of understanding and respect or dialogue between cultures etched in wood, where every curve represented an unspoken conversation across history's vast expanse. Her arms stretched wide as if to embrace the world itself, inviting it into her story, while holding on to its shared heartbeat with gentle firmness that echoed of shores kissing ocean waves and horizons reaching towards infinity. Aiden's creation would not be complete until he had imbued every element within this wooden form with a life force so real, viewers could sense the air stirring softly as if she herself took steps forward or back in time's corridor just to catch their ire, living greeting between continents that transcended mere craftsmanship. As he worked under Tokyo's glowing skyline and Kyoto lantern-lit streets, the sculpture seemed almost aware of its impending transformation from potential into a cherished artifact destined for places where stories like hers would continue to be told, her legacy not just preserved, but lived through each heart that beheld it. As Aiden prepared another piece in his workshop located within Kyoto's serene temple gardens, he carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that every protective coat applied was more than a shield against time. They were seals affixed by guardians who had once held these lands and their histories close to heart. With each layer of lacquer now drying under his careful touch in Kyoto's golden sunlight, Aiden felt he wasn't just encapsulating wood, but also capturing the essence of centuries of shared human spirit that defied barriers erected by distance and history alike. The city around him hummed with life, unconcerned about his artistic process or its profound implications, yet within this cacophony was a harmonic whisper beckoning Aiden to finish each piece just as he had begun, with intentions pure enough that every final touch seemed like an ode to the continuity of culture. Even now, beneath Kyoto's lantern-lit streets and neon lights flickering through his studio window in Tokyo after dusk fell upon both cities, Aiden felt a sense of fulfillment as he wrapped each sculpt. As Aiden stepped back into his studio in Kyoto after a long day's work, he was greeted by an ambience that seemed to transcend time, its soft scent of cedar shavings and lacquer mixed with the subtle fragrance of cherry blossoms carried through open windows. The soft light spilling into his crafting haven painted everything in a golden hue, much like Aiden's mother used to say about Kyoto's sunsets, that they were nature's way of gilding her city with beauty as time passed by its people undisturbed. Today had been particularly special. The piece he worked on was near completion, her delicate crane poised mid-flight to symbolize enduring hope amidst change and turmoil throughout history. It wasn't merely wood that Aiden shaped here, but a chronicle of tales told through generations as they wove their narratives into his creations with each careful layer he applied. This one, in particular, was meant for the Kyoto National Museum to inspire visitors from around the world and within. His hands trembled slightly not just from fatigue, but also anticipation or familiar companion during times of significance, as these sculptures were more than artistic pursuits. They represented a bridge across history, an act of preserving memories, hopes, dreams that might otherwise fade into oblivion with the passing years. As evening approached and Kyoto's streets began to hum louder beneath his feet, sounds amplified as people retreated from their day-to-day in search for solace or companionship within shared spaces of art, music, food, Aiden felt a familiar warmth settle upon him. It was the camaraderie found only amongst those who understand that they are partakers and witnesses to something greater than themselves, custodians of humanity's heartbeats, recorded in wood shavings carried by time itself within their craftsmanship. The crane took shape, each curve more confident, as if guided not just by Aiden's skilled hands, but also whispered encouragements from the past that seemed to resonate through his own memories. Her grandmother, who would regale him with stories of ancient Kyoto where spirits and humans once communed freely, an aunt, her fingers dancing over piano keys as they caressed melodies meant for lovers separated by wars but united in spirit. The essence that he sought to encapsulate was not just the wood itself or its physical form under his tools. It extended far beyond this material world into realms of shared human experience and emotional connection across ages, cultures, even continents. In Tokyo, after nightfall settled upon both cities as they embraced their dual identities inseparable from one another like intertwined strands, the energy pulsated through Aiden's veins, a constant reminder of his roots and purpose here at once, to be a vessel for stories that would continue beyond him into future generations. His hands moved with precision, yet seemed almost ethereal as they applied final touches upon the crane, each stroke imbued not just with lacquer, but also intention or silent promise etched onto wood where he could see through it to centuries past and those who had lived them in their own ways, farmers tending fields alongside bountiful harvests that fed a nation during times of scarcity or abundance alike, poets whose words carried the weight of human emotion across ages just as potent today. The piece was ready for display or culmination not only in craftsmanship, but also spirit and intent behind Aiden's laborious journey through time, encapsulated within a wooden crane's elegant form before him, now seemingly poised to take flight on its own volition, as if aware of the stories it carried. He took one last look at his creation, pride swelling in his chest. It was more than just wood that had been transformed through lacquer and art. Within each piece lay something far deeper, hope for humanity's future interwoven with its past struggles and triumphs, as they were forever enshrined by a master craftsman who believed fervently in the continuation of culture. As he turned away from his workbench, Aiden allowed himself to smile, a simple joy born not just out of success but also fulfillment that transcended material or professional achievement, knowing well into tomorrow and beyond when these pieces would touch hearts once more as they had throughout the ages for countless others before him. And perhaps one day another artist, like Aiden himself, who